The following podcast is presented by Secret Room Multimedia. You're listening to Fair Point. I'm Nathan Capisser.
And I'm Craig Lewis.
We have a pretty fucking awesome episode ahead of us.
I would say it's pretty special. Everybody's in for a treat tonight.
Absolutely. I was trying to go the route of not saying we have a treat for you tonight. I thought that was just a little too cliche, but you went there.
I did.
Yeah.
I stick with the cliches. They're easy.
I'm, of course, never shy away from calling you out on air.
Always.
We're off to a good start.
That hit so close to home, and now I've learned to tune out some things you say to me, so
most of
it's
it,
okay.
Actually.
I just keep on keeping on. More cliches. Yeah.
Well, to get along to the point, today here with us in the secret room, we've got a special guest for you. It seems to go on a pattern. It's been unintentional, but 1, 2, 3, 4 guest. 1, 2, 3, 4 guest. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mr. Brandon Dyer is here with us.
Stand-up comic.
How's it going, fellas?
He's sitting down.
Hey, what's up, man? Yes. Let's take a look at this clip, though. Let's take a listen to this clip. We've got a clip, some of your stand-up.
It's about death?
Yeah.
Yeah. We shouldn't really talk too much more about it. Let's just let's play the clip.
Oh, man. You guys are fun. I'm having kind of a tough summer, though. My grandpa died at the beginning of the summer. And we're at his wake. And everybody keeps saying how he looks like he's sleeping. It's like, I don't ever remember Grandpa sleeping in a suit and tie. What are you talking about, Aunt Grace? Or like everybody likes to say at a wake how good the dead person looks. Don't they look good? They look like they're sleeping. Because anything else to say would be a really inappropriate conversation to have at somebody's wake. You know, you're like, hey, did you see Grandpa? Doesn't he look like shit? Oh my God. What the hell? I thought he was awake for a second. Where did they find his funeral home? Off a Craigslist? Jeez. If he saw himself, he'd die all over again. I have terrible luck, so I try to stay away from certain cliches. Like, you know the cliche, like, the phone rings in the middle of the night, so you pick it up and you go, somebody better be dead. Sounds like you. Like, why would you want to be, okay, you're already woken up in the middle of the night. Why do you want somebody to be dead? That's like a double whammy, you know? That's why if the phone rings in the middle of the night, I always pick it up and go, somebody better have incredible news. Or like if it's somebody you don't like, you always say, see you in hell. Which is weird. Because I think you'd be really happy to see somebody that you knew. You know, you're like, you know, it'd be a nice way to break up that endless pain and torture. You're like, hey, aren't you the guy that cut me off in 2003? What's going on?
That was fucking awesome. I love it.
Oh,
I love
man,
it. That is
you're a
genuinely
funny guy.
hilarious, dude.
I am pretty great.
And he's modest, too.
That show in particular, all those jokes were pretty much brand new. That was all stuff that I had never done before, and it was.
You popped your cherry on those jokes?
Yeah, a few of those were definitely completely virginal jokes that then came on the scene and got down with it.
If you're interested in seeing more of that show, is the whole thing up, or is it just parts of it?
Some of it's on Vimeo. I'm pretty sure that show in particular, you can get the 30 minutes that I do. Not all of it's good. You can if you just do a search for Brandon Dyer, 30 minutes. I'm pretty sure you can find it.
Okay.
And also on YouTube, if you do a search for Brandon Dyer, I'll pop up, along with a bunch of crazy sketches that we did.
Okay.
And
you have a YouTube channel, right?
Yep,
It's
Syracuse Renegades.
So stand-up, what's the deal with that? How long have you been doing stand-up?
Stand-up comedy. I started doing stand-up comedy pretty much right after high school.
Okay.
They didn't have a comedy club at that point in Syracuse. Wise Guys, which is kind of the comedy club that's been in Syracuse on and off, now off. They are now closed. Yeah, they've been open at various times over the past 20 years.
Apparently, they're supposed to be doing something new. Apparently, open, right?
I guess something in this. I'm not really sure. They might never come back. You know, it's the kind of thing where sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not.
Now, do you think Funny Bone in the new Destiny Mall might have had something to do with them?
Absolutely. Because Funny Bone, you're going to get guys that have actually been on television, and you'll actually know who they are.
Pauly Shore is going to be there soon. I want to go see fucking Pauly
I mean,
Shore.
Mick Foley's been there. And...
Mick Foley is another one. Mick Foley was, he did alumni day at my college. Mick Foley and I went to Cortland.
I went to Cortland.
You went to Cortland,
and he
too?
was there. I saw him there.
He was.
What year? What?
I graduated in 2005, so I was there from 2001.
I was there from 02 to 06.
Oh my God,
we were in
yeah.
college together. Well, I mean, it's not like it's a 20-person campus.
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome. I'm not even into wrestling. I fucking love Mick Foley. I went to see him at the Funny Bone, and I got to meet him, and he signed my picture 4 times because it was Mankind, Dude Love, Cactus Jack, Mick Foley. He signed it once for each of them.
That's great.
Yeah, fucking A.
He's a very gifted storyteller.
Yeah,
he is.
Great dude.
Yeah,
for someone who has not watched wrestling since 13 years ago, that I could still get excited about going to meet this guy is pretty impressive. He's pretty fucking awesome.
It's kind of like seeing Hulk Hogan, if Hulk Hogan wasn't like a total disgrace.
But I wouldn't care. I wouldn't even care about meeting Hulk Hogan. Mick Foley's the only one I really give that much of a shit about. There's other guys I respect too that I would like.
And most of those
Don't
guys
get
are
me wrong.
dead. Like Mick Foley has survived. Most of the wrestlers from our time period. See, in that kind of, and of course, you know, like a podcast is like a wheel. It all kind of rounds out. All of the greats have died, just like stand-up comics. Most of the great stand-up comics are dead.
Unfortunately, we do not have Bill Hicks. Unfortunately, we had to settle for Brandon Dyer.
I pale in comparison, for sure. But so does every other stand-up comic that's ever
very
lived.
few don't.
So.
Yes, don't take it personal.
Oh, I don't.
Yeah. We know we pale in comparison to like 90% of podcasts out there, so it's all good.
I would say at least 70%. You guys are pretty
Wow,
cool.
he's giving us some credit there.
You're too kind. Thank you, sir.
That's true. Well, you did let me sleep here for a week. So. That was pretty cool.
Did you ever clean up that blood?
I did not. I didn't clean up anything. I did go in a corner. It's up to you to find out which one.
That's what that smell is.
Yeah, well, it's probably me. What you're smelling is probably me. But anyway.
So, okay, we should probably get back to the point. We got very steered away when we found out we went to college together. So, were you doing stand-up at Cortland? I mean, I know they got Dave Coulier 1 year.
He dated Alanis Morissette.
Who did date Alanis Morissette.
We just can't keep them two off this podcast.
she totally burned him with, was it You Oughta Know? Was that the song she burned him with?
She burned us all.
Yeah.
That was actually written about Jay Muse. If you watch, it was written about Dave Coulier, but there's actually this whole this skit with Jay and Silent Bob where Jay talks about how he had dated Alanis Morissette once. She was his girlfriend from Canada, you know, the John Hughes reference, and but they made him break up with her. The record label paid him and forced him to break up with her so that it would help her career, and she always blamed him, and so she wrote that song about it.
It certainly did help her career. I think that whole album was like my summer 1997.
That album's one of my favorite albums. It's definitely going to be on the top list. However big that list is, I notice how
whenever
I'll edit it in later.
Yeah,
it'll definitely be on the top 50 list.
No, seriously though, did you do stand up in Cortland?
I didn't do stand up in Cortland as much as I made some really weird appearances. I was the mascot. I was the red
You were the dragon?
I was the dragon.
Get out.
I was.
So I did see him there.
Oh, you might have shaken my hand. I shook everybody's hand pretty much that was at those football games. Yeah, it was pretty fun. Except for during the pep rally, the football team had this idea that they wanted to use the costume, so they left me in my underwear in like 40 degrees.
Oh my god!
While they used the costume, they came back to me later. Here's your costume back. Thanks. It's wet.
It's all wet.
It was soaking wet. But anyway. They dumped Gatorade. At least they took me out of the suit before they dumped Gatorade on it, I suppose.
So yeah, but then you're just getting a sticky, wet suit.
Yeah, then I got to wear a Gatorade-soaked dragon suit back
in
to the
45-degree weather.
Because of course, like as a poor student going to a public institution, I didn't have a car, so I had to walk back to the dorm in a wet.
Even if you had a car, you would have had to park like far away from it anyways. Yeah. You were probably parking at the stadium.
Freshmen in Cortland have to park in Tully.
Yeah, for real. And those of you that don't know geographic locations,
yeah, these are all upstate New York geographical jokes. So if you don't get them, just look on Google Maps. That's what it's there for. But yeah. So and then after college, I started doing like open mics. Like I said, there wasn't a Syracuse club that did open mics regularly. So there was now a defunct comics cafe that I used to drive out to and do that once a week. And like all stand-up comics, what you do is you just are terrible for a really long time, and you bomb, and you bomb, and
right.
you eat it.
You have to
and then
pay your dues there.
Right, yeah. Eventually, you break through, and you figure out setup, punchline, and then it starts working out for you.
Now, do you think that's the big divider between people that are successful with comedy and people that aren't? Like those people that aren't maybe can't get past that wall of being bad and trying to overcome it?
Well, I think there are people that are born to be stand-up comics, and I think there are people that really want to be stand-up comics. And the thing that divides them is creativity. There are creative people and there are non-creative people.
Yes, we know
if you are a non-creative person, but like, and that's, you can be as funny as you can, but if you're not creative and funny, then you're never going to be a stand-up. Because you can borrow from other things. Like you can say, oh, I know, that's funny. Like kind of like Carlos Mencia is a perfect example of somebody that is funny, but he isn't a creative mind.
Well, didn't he used to steal a lot of jokes?
Oh, absolutely. He stole from Bill Cosby famously. And he was called out by Joe Rogan. There's a big YouTube.
Yeah,
a 20-minute thing.
That's what I heard. I also heard that like he would go to like comedy clubs in Chicago of like amateur comedians and take their jokes and use them in his bit.
Right, and because it's
that's
scummy.
Oh my god, that's fucked up.
And that's just the nature of it. And like if you are one of the people that doesn't steal, you're not okay with it, but it doesn't really piss you off because you're going to write up something that's going to be better,
right.
Or you're going to come up with something down the road.
You can outdo him.
Right, versus a thief is always constantly, they're in fear that they're never going to come up with anything again, and that's why they're stealing.
Right.
So, but that's just the what really separates people that can be stand-up comics from people that cannot be stand-up comics. And there are a lot of people that do stand-up comedy that will never be stand-up comics. That they'll come and they will do show after show after show after show, but they will never get better. The criticism of bombing doesn't actually impact them. Like they will just
they think no matter what they're doing good.
Right. They think, well, I just have to be terrible for 20 years. And it's like, no, eventually you do get better.
You do got to step your game
right.
up a little bit.
But there is there is a huge stable of comedians in every town in America that will never get beyond the American Legion. And that's okay. It's kind of like not everybody that plays basketball on the weekends plays in the NBA. Like the people that are in the NBA are going to play in the NBA. But there's also guys that
there's a lot more incentive to be an NBA player, though.
Right? Yeah. Well, you think? I would think so. At least the groupies are probably a lot better than comedy groupies are probably not as good as NBA groupies.
I was thinking a little more along the lines of making like $10 million a year.
You can make a lot of. I mean, like Louis C.K. He just made $1 million 20 minutes ago. I was just sitting around.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but
do you think the ratio of basketball players making that much to stand-up comedians making that much?
I think there's a lot more basketball players making that much for sure.
That's because you're talking about like your Daniel Tosh's and, you know, and like your Louis C.K.'s and all those guys are like top billing right now,
Right.
basically. So, and then most of the other people, you know, you see on Comedy Half Hour, on Comedy Central, and it's like they're probably not making like millions of dollars.
And I think that's really the main thing is just because there's a guy on television doing comedy, it doesn't mean he's good.
I've seen so many bad comedy specials.
Exactly. And this is why the greatness of Bill Hicks is that no one ever heard of him until it was too late. Everyone could appreciate how great he was. You know, it happened too late. Like if we had appreciated his
It's like
greatness,
the definition of a tragic comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, you know, right when his career was going to really take off, that's when the corporate structure of Hollywood or comedy or show businesses, wherever you want to call it, it wants to reward the Carlos Mencias that are affable. It doesn't want to reward the stand-up comic like Bill Hicks that has something to say. I mean, 90% of what Bill Hicks...
But it's going to alienate some of their potential viewers, so...
Exactly.
Obviously, Bill Hicks is a huge influence of yours. Do you have any other big stand-up comics that were real big inspirations to you?
Well, a lot of what, like, from Bill Hicks's class, like Sam Kinison is one of his contemporary. He's not obvious. He doesn't really stand up to the test of time like Hicks does. But he.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like as of now, Sam Kinison's most notably known just for like screaming loud.
Right? Yeah, exactly. In like all the Rodney Dangerfield movies, and you know, like Head of the Class. I forget what was the Rodney? The one where he dove into the pool off of like 7 diving boards. That one.
Oh yeah.
And you know, like Carl LeBove is another guy that's actually still alive. That's doing comedy. They called themselves the Houston Outlaws or Texas Outlaws or something.
Yeah. Bill Hicks was a part of that, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. And they all came from it was like a small comedy theater that was just in Houston.
Okay.
And they let these new up-and-coming guys come on and gave them stage time. That's really what is missing in the modern game is we don't have these places that will let you on to work on your stuff. They want you to... You have to be great every time because every time you're being judged like, okay, well, am I going to use this guy on Saturday? Well, he just ate it for 5 minutes. Maybe I'm working on if you're working on a new bit, you're not necessarily getting laughter. You're just mining for information at that point. Okay. So, you know, that like Bill Hicks had that place that he could work on his stuff. Bill Hicks basically is everywhere. Like comics that worked with him, like Ron Schock is a guy that is part of that class. He just recently passed away. He had cancer.
I saw that name during my research, but I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, he's a really gifted stand-up comic. He's a storytelling stand-up comic. Completely just a different... Like, that's the thing. A lot of these guys that all came from this Houston area, all of their styles were so different, but they were all hilarious. So, you know, they all kind of, like, had this big group, but they didn't actually do all the same thing. Versus now, like, I feel like most comics they fall into different categories. Like, you have Louis C.K. comics... You have Dane Cook comics, and then you have like Jeff Dunham comics. You know, the Jeff Dunham comics. Maybe they don't use puppets. Right, yeah, they don't use puppets, but maybe they have catchphrases,
something to catch the redneck crowd.
Right, yeah, exactly. Like other comics that are just absolutely great, that are actually still alive. Because unfortunately, most of the comics that are really my influences are dead. Like Mitch Hedberg.
Loved Mitch Hedberg.
You know, Mitch Hedberg is, one of those guys that, he unites people. But unfortunately, I feel like Mitch Hedberg is one of those guys that he also won't stand the test of time. He'll just be one of those voices.
You don't think so?
I think that Hedberg is he didn't really say anything. Like he had great jokes and they were great pieces of comedy, but he wasn't making a social stance.
Oh, not at all.
Right. It was just jokes.
It was almost like anti-comedy.
You don't need to. I mean, obviously, I truly respect that. You know what I mean? But people like Bill Hicks or George Carlin, do.
Right.
At the same time, it's just like music. I respect a musician that can actually say something and do something of importance with it. But I also respect a musician that just makes music that's really good to listen to. My favorite band has never once said anything of importance in any of their lyrics, but I fucking love their music.
I think like the thing with Hedberg, I think it's more like he was so great, but he didn't have enough staying power. Like he only had really 2 specials that 2 hours that he put out there. And
like maybe he didn't have enough time once he got popular.
Right.
Before.
The stuff that he did put on record was great, but it's almost like he didn't play enough games in a baseball season to get elected to the All-Star game kind of thing.
Right.
I'm not a huge Louis C.K. guy. Like I think Louis C.K.
Cool, but...
I think he's very funny, but I do see a drop off in his specials.
Okay.
Like that whole idea that he's putting out a special every year. I think he needs to retire that idea, and he needs to just put out great specials instead of worrying about, well, let me do an hour and then retire it. Because I feel like that's just kind of like self-serving. Like he's just saying like, oh, I'm so great, I'm going to make a special every year, and then I'm going to retire all this. Because there's nothing really memorable to me about his last 4 specials. Like I watched them. I know I was entertained when I watched them. But as far as taking something away and being like, wow, that is so funny. And like, I'm remembering this Louis C.K. bit when I'm at the bus stop or something and I'm laughing to myself. That doesn't happen.
What do you think of
Aziz
Ansari?
Aziz Ansari, I think, is hilarious.
Yeah, I think he's
I'm a fan of his. His delivery is really what makes it.
Delivery, his personality.
He was one of the big reasons why I continued to watch Parks and Rec for a while.
So do you get a lot of questions of, where do you come up with your material? Where do you get your jokes?
And I think that's different for everybody. I personally borrow a lot from things that really bother me, like things that are necessarily kind of painful to me, and like actually, and I'll write a joke that kind of makes light of that insecurity or that, and that's really where I get my best stuff. Is when I'm really like looking at something that kind of like one of the things, I'm an only child. I have 0 siblings. So that was something that kind of bothers me. Like, when my parents die, I'm going to be alone. I'm not going to have anybody. My family is I'm left.
No family to turn to.
Right. I have no family. And, and I'm married, and I'm going to be having a little girl in November. I'm going to have 2 kids now. So it's not like I'm going to be alone, but it's something that definitely bothered me. So one of my bits is I write about only child and like how negative the phrase only child is. Like the word only makes whatever you're describing sound terrible.
Right.
Like, this is my only gold medal. Or like, I only came twice. It's like, oh, that was an
you're
off
so
night.
Disappointed with that.
Right, I'm so disappointed. Like, and then it's almost like, that's your only child? Why'd you even bother? So it's like, and that was a perfect example of, that's something that it's like, it really bothers me that I'm an only child. So, it kind of like that painful thing, and I can make a joke out of it. And that's when I get really like, doing that bit right now. I wrote that bit probably 3 years ago, and I can just rattle it off because all of them are up here.
Well, it's yours.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And it's something very personal to me. Yeah. So that I tell it and you guys laugh. It's like, it makes the fact that I'm an only child just that much more bearable. And I think that a lot of comics
but
are like that.
guys. But seriously, I'm horribly depressed right now.
Right, seriously, I cry myself to sleep.
I'm glad that I can help you in any way.
I appreciate that.
Anyway,
yeah.
I'm always here.
When I'm drying my eyes later, I'm going to remember your smile, and it's going to make me feel better for at least a moment.
For at least a moment. And then you'll turn around, and I'll be right there. I'll go, no, fuck you, only child.
Exactly. You don't
bring
have
you
any
right
siblings.
back down.
That's a fucking fantastic answer to that question. I'm wondering if it bothers you when people ask that, because it bothers me if people ask me where I come up with my ideas with things I write or like music or stuff. And it bothers me when I'm listening to Q&As or watching Q&As and they ask that. I'm like, what an uninspired question. Like, Jesus Christ.
Where does it come from?
Well, think
stuff
about
I
it.
Like I think about stuff and I come up with ideas. Like I don't know how to answer that.
Think about it. You have one chance to ask a question in a Q&A, and that's what you come up with?
It's their excuse to talk to somebody they like. That's
for
what
real.
it is. I don't know what to ask him.
It's like, does it matter? Are you trying to, go and find the secret so you can create the same thing that he just did?
Right.
Like,
it's like, what's your favorite color? Like,
yeah.
And why? Why is that your favorite color? But I think, you know what it is? I think
No. Explain to me why it's your favorite color.
Yeah,
I need
exactly.
to know this.
I need to know this.
Important stuff going on.
I think that's just the people that are really creative at stand-up comedy. A lot of what makes a great stand-up comic go is insecurity. That's what really makes a stand-up comic go ahead. Because if any normal person, if they fail 99% of the time out of the shoot, they're going to quit. Like if you tried to play guitar and you tried to play guitar for a decade and you never got any better, you probably would get sick of the guitar. And that's kind of how stand-up comedy is. You can just be really terrible for a long time, but then suddenly it clicks. The reason I can answer that question is because I finally said, what is it about me that will make people laugh? And that's really what I came up with. I said, well, I have all these insecurities that I'm really trying to deal with through stand-up comedy, so why don't I use that as an inspiration for the jokes? And as soon as I started doing that, that's when I started cooking with gas. And that's when it went from, like, I'm doing 2 minutes barely to now I can stand on stage for 10 or 15 or 30 minutes. And now I'm actually owning the room, because that's where all that comes from, is when you're almost
hitting Dane Cook numbers there.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, I think like Dane Cook is a perfect example of somebody that is doing comedy that is probably personal to him, but not personal to 99% of the people in the world, because he's like, oh, sharks, and like jumping around on stage, like hitting himself over the head, and that's probably very personal to him, but to most people, they just go, what an idiot, what is he talking about?
You got the 12-year-old going, he's jumping around,
right?
It's funny.
Exactly. He's probably inside. Dane
noises.
Cook is a 12-year-old boy. Really?
Well, aren't we all?
Well, I don't know. I feel like I grew to 17.
Well, then maybe Dane Cook's 11.
You stopped at 17.
Yep. Yeah, that was 13 years ago.
Was that that was like your prime then, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. The minute I started feeling bad about being an only child, that's when a development was arrested.
Well, I was thinking that was right before college started, and then you realized you could just drink whenever you want because your parents aren't there.
Yeah, flip nights in Portland basically ruined me. That's when you flip a coin and you say heads or tails, and if you get it right, they give you the beer. Like, what an alcoholic! Like, what kind of like?
What?
You
have nothing
seriously.
to lose. Worst case scenario, you're just paying for your beer.
Exactly.
For me, it was greasy ass calzones open till 4 a.m.
Oh God, DP dough. I personally gained at least 40 pounds eating DP dough.
Best food ever.
Hopefully, it's DP dough and not
double penetration. Because it had nothing to do with that.
I don't think you could top that. So
you can't top double penetration.
So
once you hit double penetration, it's
time
over. It's just like Ashton Kutcher and Hitler.
That's true.
Today, a young man on acid realized that all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration, that we are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves. Here's Brandon with science news.
Scientists recently discovered a blue planet that is orbiting a distant star.
That's a good color for a planet to be.
Unfortunately,
and not just because it's a nice color, but water.
Right, but it is actually probably because this planet is so close to its mother star that it is so hot that the atmosphere is filled with silica, like glass. It probably rains glass. And what this planet is,
So you're saying it's habitable?
That's
right.
metal.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so brutal.
Heavy metal.
They estimate wind speeds to be 4,500 miles an hour. They call it a hot Jupiter because it's like basically the same distance from Earth as is to the sun that this planet is from its host star, and it's about the size of Jupiter.
Oh,
that's how we're able to see it. If it was the size of Earth,
is it a gaseous planet like Jupiter?
So exactly. I take it that star is much stronger and more powerful than our sun.
I don't know that actually.
Well, if it's the same distance.
Right. It might be. I mean, like, I think the relative size of the star, our sun is a small star in the scheme of things.
So it's probably a much bigger one.
Probably.
Like what Craig's saying is because if it's able to draw something like Jupiter that close to it.
Right. Yeah, I guess I can see what you're saying, yeah.
It'd be that hot to where,
right.
It's just raining glass.
And we are physicists, so if you take anything from this episode, it's that it's definitely...
Well, I don't know about you, but we've already discussed this. I went to Cortland. I got my degree in physicist guy stuff.
That's fucking awesome. It rains glass.
Pretty badass.
4,500 mile an hour winds.
The funny thing is I saw this story on the Weather Channel.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's got to be true because it's not like it's the History Channel.
Yeah, exactly.
For all you guys bitching about the rain all summer.
We got a heat wave, but at least it's not raining glass, you big whining babies.
Yeah, why don't you just go move out to the blue planet?
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of unbridled destruction, which is the best segue on the podcast yet.
It better have something to do with unbridled destruction, or I swear to God, Nathan.
Set pictures have started surfacing and viral marketing as well for Gareth Edwards' Godzilla reboot. The legendary pictures.
Ooh, I have heard of this.
Which supposedly they showed the trailer at Comic-Con last year, and only like those people in that room have seen it. So it hasn't leaked yet, but There's viral marketing coming now with fake news stories and stuff.
I love it when movies build up with stuff like that.
Yeah.
That got me so into Prometheus, and then I was just let down.
Prometheus, huh? Oh man, that's a rocky road to start treading down if we start talking about Prometheus.
Okay.
We're not gonna stop.
We just will talk about Alien versus Predator. If we're gonna
No. That did not exist.
You know what? Yeah, Prometheus isn't that bad, actually.
Prometheus contradicted the canon of the Alien
Like
vs.
I
Predator
said,
movies.
Craig, that's too rocky a road for us to venture down in the news segment of the Bill Hicks episode. But yeah, I don't know. It's pretty cool. They're keeping details really tightly wrapped about the plot. That's like a big thing, that the plot's being kept secret. Spoiler alert, guys. It's going to be about Godzilla destroying shit.
Damn it, you always spoil the best parts.
I will say this though, I hope that Hollywood starts churning out monster movies like they did like zombie movies back in like the early 2000s, or they started doing like vampire movies more.
A
as
monster
of late.
movie craze would be
a monster
amazing.
movie craze, I would love it.
Hold
I've been
on.
waiting for it since I was a kid.
Because there has been kind of a monster movie craze in B movie department. You have all those like
Yeah, but you
mega
said
and.
Hollywood.
Do we really need another Cloverfield though?
Yes. To answer your question, yes.
I'm saying made by Legendary Pictures. Like
No, okay. We'll let
I
Legendary
know I'm in
Pictures
this
have
boat
it.
alone, but yes, I do want Cloverfield too. Fuck you guys.
I think the thing that made Cloverfield fail is it was just too dark. I felt like I was watching. You need to turn the lights on in your house when you watch.
What made it fail was it. Honestly, I fucking loved it, but it completely was dependent on. It was a product of the marketing and the atmosphere that it came out in. What does this monster look like? My friend told me this movie's fucking nuts. It was like going to see it was this big, like I didn't know anything about it, and like I was really curious what the monster was going to look like.
I was let down by it.
Yeah? Did you see it in theaters?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and also seeing it in theaters was a much different experience from seeing it on a TV, because it's a very...
Yeah.
Hopefully this Godzilla movie will be better than Cloverfield, though.
Well, even a fan of Cloverfield is hoping
Yes.
for it. So, well, going from the big screen to the small screen, I have a little bit of news on season 4 of Walking Dead. We got a little bit of a interview with Robert Kirkman. What can we expect and stuff like that. And of course, in Robert Kirkman fashion, he was extremely vague and left everything open, and then gave you something, but then said maybe not.
Of course.
Yeah.
Are you a Walking Dead guy at all?
I am not.
Don't watch the show. Read the comic. I mean, and then if you want to watch the show, go ahead. But please don't watch the show and judge Walking Dead based on the quality of the television program.
I think that's really why I've stayed away from it. It's like everybody's like, "Oh, I love that TV show." Like everybody loves The Newsroom.
No.
I can't get into The Newsroom.
We actually talked about that.
did have
on
a
previous
discussion
episode.
about
fuck The Newsroom, dude. I
It's
watched
horrible, right?
Yes, dude.
It's terrible.
Okay, once you start bombing on Game of Thrones, though, that's when you have to get out.
Absolutely. Okay. See, now I'm not into Game of Thrones, but like I'm waiting almost like for seasons to build up so I can just do like a whole weekend of Game of Thrones. That's really what I do that with a lot of shows. Like, I did that with Mad Men. Like I just waited for my DVR to be almost full, and then it's like, we gotta watch this. We gotta make a commitment here, or we gotta start deleting Deadliest Catch.
I'm just holding out until my need to see Allison Brie being all sexy just outweighs my disinterest in Mad Men.
Going back to, you were talking about the difference, you want him to read the comic book instead of watch the show. He was saying that there's going to be a lot of surprises, and comic book fans are going to be pleasantly surprised that a lot of the closest adaptations of the comic to the show are going to be in this next upcoming season.
Oh, really?
So there's going to be a lot of that going on. Some things were even adapted directly, almost, and that actually has some say from Scott Dimple, who's the new showrunner. As you know, Greg Nicotero was backed out after last year, or was forced out after last year. And Scott Gimple, did I say Dimple? Scott Gimple. He's going to be the new showrunner, and he's basically been a producer and a writer for the show for the past 3 seasons, so he's been around.
Okay.
But he's also credited with the screenplay for Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. So...
Yeah, I didn't see that, so I can't really judge the writing.
Oh, I saw it. I thought he did a disservice to Ghost Rider in the first movie, but he completely annihilated the character, like 100% in the second movie.
There's a franchise I didn't have to think twice about when I just passed it.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing you got to know about me is I'm kind of a glutton for punishment when it comes. Like, I know it's going to be bad, and I don't even enjoy it watching it, but God, I have to see it. Same way with the Resident Evil movies. I've seen every single one and enjoyed maybe 10 minutes of the whole series.
As far as before we move on from The Walking Dead, did you see the teaser that leaked? The season 4 teaser, The Governor's Back?
No, I didn't.
Well, I won't spoil it. It's not what you're expecting. Go check it out.
It's not what you're expecting?
It's not at all what you're expecting. Rabbi Alfredo Baradowski has apparently been arrested after 3 separate incidents involving him impersonating a police officer to get people that he's road raging at to pull over so he can scream at them and like.
Wait, there's a rabbi?
A rabbi.
Well, he's supposed to be a man of faith.
Yeah, but
he's passing judgment on bad drivers. As a cop,
he flashes this fake badge like out the window, and he's like, "Police, pull over, police!" And I guess like 2 of the people have just been like, "No, you're not a cop," and just kept driving. Someone actually did pull over, like, and he's just like screaming and honking their horn, and like people called the police on him, and he's like, "Oh,
you can't call the police on me. I am the police.
I said I was going to call the police on them." I
So,
don't remember what it said, but
did he go to jail for impersonating a police officer? Did they buy his little?
I don't know if he's
shtick?
in jail yet. He's probably awaiting trial. They tried contacting his congregation, to which they said, "No comment. That's his personal life."
Huh. Well, they're not going to fire him.
I don't know if you can get fired if you're a rabbi.
Really?
I don't know. Like
rabbis for life.
Pretty strict on their rules.
Right, but I think as long as he's not like if he was eating like
pork?
If he was pulling people over and eating pork chops, or if he was like
this shit's delicious. Try it.
He's throwing lobsters through people's windows right in their face. I don't think that's okay.
Dude, if this story was rabbi arrested after throwing lobsters through people's window on the highway.
Seriously.
You eat the shellfish. No.
Exactly. That reminds me, did you guys see this viral video that's making the rounds now of this motorcyclist? I guess he had a dashboard cam, and he's riding, and someone had left a little cup, like it was like a coffee cup, sitting on the bumper of their car. And they're driving on the highway, and he's riding up, and he sees it sitting there, and he grabs it and like pulls up alongside their window, and he's like, "Hey," and lady rolls down her window. She's like, "My damn daughter!"
All while still driving.
Yeah, all while on a motorcycle on the highway. Yeah, what an awesome guy.
Well, he's got to be a good driver in order to be able to just like pull up, grab the coffee cup off the rear of her bumper.
And then the rabbi pulled up behind him. He's like, "Pull over!"
I saw you give him that coffee. At least you can be rest assured that when someone is riding on a motorcycle, they can't poison your coffee. It seems like that would be almost like too much multitasking.
Yeah,
returning a cup.
I think he would have to have a roofie dispenser on the side of his bike.
Right, yeah, exactly. And you would see something like that.
Which reminds me, what if Batman was a date rapist? He would totally have the roofie dispenser on the
pretty
side
good
of the
at
bat cycle.
He'd be pretty good at it.
He probably would. Jesus, that was random.
Dark, scary.
If Batman was a date rapist, we'd all be fucked. And I mean that literally.
Just the facts. William Melvin Hicks, better known as Bill Hicks, was an American stand-up comedian known for his often controversial social commentary. Born December 16th, 1961, he died of pancreatic cancer in 1994 at the age of 32.
That was a sad day for not just the world of comedy, but society as a whole.
Me personally, I was 10 and I had no idea what was going on. So
Yeah,
I was just a happy 10-year-old then.
You really needed to be either a comedy geek or British to know who Bill Hicks was.
He had a much bigger
1994.
following in England.
Yes, Bill Hicks was a rock star in England. Bill Hicks produced a couple specials for BBC that were played in prime time.
Oh,
On
Wow.
channel,
that's impressive for
channel
an American
2 or
comedian.
that was the thing. He became so much bigger there than he ever did here. And I think a lot of that had to do with what he was talking about at the time. He was being very critical of the first Gulf War.
Okay.
And England, of course, they were on our side, but public sentiment was that we shouldn't be helping Kuwait. So he was pretty much pushed to go to Europe. Mainstream media in the United States would never allow someone to be critical of the first Gulf War on normal airtime.
Right.
Like that's something, HBO typically they never did like a Bill Hicks HBO special because you had to be huge to be on HBO.
You're talking about like the full hour,
right?
Special.
Like the full out. Like Kevin Hart just came out with a movie that's in movie theaters. Eddie Murphy's Raw, Eddie Murphy's Delirious. Those are those kind of specials. A lot of money, a lot of budget. And then Bill Hicks was more like way down the chute. Like you might be able to see Bill Hicks like in Syracuse. That's the level Bill Hicks was at when he died. Like he had done Tonight Show appearances, or I'm pretty sure he was on Letterman. Right? Yeah, he had done. But you know, you can be a working comic and get on the Tonight Show. That wasn't necessarily. It wasn't like Johnny Carson. Like only the big guys got on Johnny Carson. Like Bill Hicks was so prophetic. So much of what Bill Hicks talked about was the illusion of choice that is given to the American people. So much of Bill Hicks was about like corporations using media and using advertising to fool you into thinking the reality that you are in is actually real. Like, you know, you wake up, you work, you live your life, and then you die. That is not reality. That is the reality that they feed to you because they want you just to be a consumer. They want you just to wake up, do exactly what you do every day, and then...
No wonder they didn't want to promote him.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing.
Corporate America promoting things that's against them. And that'll never happen.
That's the big thing. Like, one of the really famous Bill Hicks bits was, is anybody in advertising? Kill yourself. And that was, you know, because he never...
Not a joke.
That is not a joke.
Joking.
That is not a joke.
He's like, kill yourself.
And so much, like, early Bill Hicks was characters and a lot of personal stories, and it wasn't as much topical, controversial kind of social commentary. It was later Bill Hicks when he, after, like, he did Sane Man. That's when he came back and he was doing a lot of social commentary. That was like 1989. And that's when he was talking about how Bush 1 was kind of a liar, which kind of, you know, and that's the thing. A lot of the things that Bill Hicks said have now hashed themselves out. Like he was talking about how the government is watching you. And he was talking about that in 1989. Or how they're selling you on the idea that we're fighting a war. A war has two armies. We only have one army. We're not actually fighting a war. We are going and we are killing people. We're killing individuals. We're not fighting a country. And just that idea that we're going to sell people on a war because we want everybody to just get on the bandwagon. We don't want you to think for yourself. And that was a lot of what Bill Hicks was all about. Thinking for yourself. Making your own decisions.
Basically what we always support here.
Absolutely.
Fair point.
Yeah.
You know, the mainstream is always going to be the mainstream. And they're always going to follow exactly what they're told to follow.
I think that was the biggest crime with Bill Hicks, that he wasn't bigger in the United States, was so much of what he was saying, you know, 20 years later, and we had YouTube. If he had a voice like social media, I think it would have been a completely different scenario for Bill Hicks. Because, you know, Bill Hicks was on Howard Stern, and back when Howard Stern was like hard to listen to.
Yeah.
You know, like like when Howard Stern was like, you know, not a mainstream thing. Now Howard Stern is on NBC.
South Park's come and gone.
Right.
I mean, it hasn't gone yet, but you know what I mean. Like the shock of South Park has come and gone.
You know, people would have a problem with his jokes about Jesus, and he'd say, "Well, if you're a Christian, forgive me." And, you know, basically, you know, putting that pin in, like, people that, you know, they say, you know, I know what God wants, I know what God thinks, and, you know, not necessarily following what they're actually saying.
And there's a lot of times when he expresses things that make it very clear he's not, as I'm sure some people must have called him at some point or another, some godless heathen or something. I mean, he's made reference to, like, the light inside of us that I can't remember the exact quotes, but you know what I mean. Like, he's made very specific references that he's obviously, in some sense, a spiritual person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Bill Hicks was raised, I'm pretty sure he was raised Southern Baptist.
Oh, okay.
From what I've read and from what I've seen, like in his, you know, he's got like some biographical movies out. And it wasn't necessarily that he followed like religion. Like I remember a story that he told about Sam Kinison, and because Sam Kinison was a former preacher.
I did not.
Yeah, Sam Kinison
that.
Sam Kinison was a preacher. Sam Kinison was
the yelling guy.
Yes,
yeah,
it was a
the
preacher.
Guy. There's the precedence for that.
And so a lot of like Sam Kinison and Bill Hicks, they all came from this school of, it's not about necessarily religion. It's about that feeling like a caveman felt, feeling like that there was a God looking down on him. That's religion. That's spirituality. Not necessarily
organized,
right? Not necessarily
the rules that
right.
people tell
If you show up and you give us 10% of your earnings, then you're in the club. That's man-made religion. What Bill Hicks was all about that we are all part of one consciousness. We're all part of one overreaching. Like there is no such thing as death. We are all the imagination of ourselves. We're all made of the same stuff. We're all made of, star dust. We're all made of the same junk. This table, this microphone, all three of us in this room, we're all basically only a few molecules apart from being exactly the same stuff.
On a physics level, when you get far enough down, there really isn't an actual distinguishing between separate objects and stuff.
That is the falsehood of reality. That is what Bill Hicks is saying. It's about realizing that we are no different. You can come from a different part of the world. You can be a different race. You can be a different religion. We're no different. All of us are exactly the same. And when we can start to laugh at these differences, and we can start to laugh at the hypocrisy that these differences create, that's when we can truly be free. I feel like I'm getting really deep talking about a comedian.
Yeah, it's well, that it comes with that, especially if you got somebody. Yeah, he's a deep guy.
The best part about Bill Hicks is 90% of his jokes are hilarious. It's not necessarily that he's talking about these really deep-heady things and you're having to sit there and be serious about it. He is hysterical. Like if you watch any of his specials, even now, 30 years ago.
It doesn't seem dated at all.
Absolutely.
It totally holds
he's hysterical.
Up. And especially when you think about that back then, there weren't a lot of comics talking about issues. I mean, he has stuff about gay marriage, which is that's such a huge issue now. Granted, it was an issue then, but it wasn't something you saw stand-up comedians and people in the field of entertainment dealing with, or even really, saw.
If anything, it was the opposite, where the mainstream stand-up comedian
was against it.
Absolutely,
yeah. He seemed to be extremely progressive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, because the '80s, that was the whole, AIDS is out and it's the gay people's fault. And we all know it was the government's fault. Come on, guys.
Like Andrew Dice Clay or even Eddie Murphy. I mean, can you imagine Eddie Murphy, who was on Saturday Night Live, talking about how he doesn't like gay people? Can you even imagine a comedian nowadays coming out and saying, I don't like gay people?
Oh, he would have been
chastised. It'd be the kiss of death for their career.
Yeah, say goodbye. I mean,
because Eddie Murphy was definitely like, what if a gay guy kisses your girlfriend's lips and then she kisses you and you have AIDS? That's an actual Eddie Murphy bit that he did on stage.
Oh my God.
And then ladies
and gentlemen, welcome to the 80s.
But he got his when he picked up a transvestite and he was caught by the police.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about that. Boy, was his face red.
Unfortunately, Bill Hicks, when he was really on the cusp of being discovered by a mainstream audience, he did an appearance on David Letterman right after Letterman switched to CBS, because Letterman was on obviously later at night. At one point, he came on after The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. After he switched to CBS, he had Bill Hicks on. Bill Hicks had been a regular on Letterman.
Yeah, like we said earlier, he had made 11, 12 appearances, something like that.
And during this performance, he did a bit about how we wear crosses to signify that we're Christians and how backwards that is. It's almost as if to commemorate JFK, if people wore rifle pendants. Which is on its face. It's fun. Because Jesus would want to come back, and that's really probably one of the last things you want to see is the cross that he was tortured and died on. Which is as we're talking about it, that would be something that you probably would hear in a sitcom. That sounds like something that isn't that necessarily anything worse than you'd see on 2.5 Men.
He's
for
not
example.
actually saying anything offensive about Jesus.
Precisely. And that bit was edited out. And Bill Hicks was dropped from that appearance.
The entire bit. Not just that little joke, but the entire stand-up.
But they did later put it on.
Yeah, like almost 20 years later. It was 2007 or something. His mom, Bill Hicks' mom, came on the show, and David Letterman apologized, took full responsibility.
And they aired
it. Yeah, they aired the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, at least he was man enough to admit that.
Yeah, honestly, it might not have been David Letterman, but
it could have been the producers.
You don't pin responsibility on somebody else on your own show. You take responsibility for it. That's what you do. And yeah, I respect that.
Because ultimately he's making the big bucks. It's his face out front.
Yeah, even if there's a producer in the back, you don't be like, oh, the producers made this decision. And that even is a bad move for him. Like, I don't have control over my own show.
Right, and that just makes you look like you're skirting responsibilities.
Exactly, yeah.
The funny thing is that even exists today. This idea that you need to censor, that people will not be able to understand what is humor and what is offensive. That exists. Like, I did a show in New York City, January of 2012, and it was Comic Strip Live. It was their lottery show. How this works is you go down, you get a number, and that assigns you to a specific show sometime in the future. So I got a number 6 months before. I went down and did the show. And if you are passed, that means that you can come and you can do your jokes on their stage any weekend. You can go and you become a regular.
Right.
They let you come on and do it. So I went down to this club. In the front room of this club are rats. There are actual rats walking around, street rats. This place has an infestation problem.
Oh my god!
I'm to the bartender. I'm like, there's rats on the floor, and they're like, yeah, it's just really cold outside, so they come in. And so there's rats.
They're
3 feet away from handfuls of nachos that they're pulling out and getting for people.
And then he felt bad, and he's like, well, I mean, don't kick them out into the cold.
Right, exactly.
Well, and
are they going to buy drinks? They didn't buy tickets.
Right. And when you were saying that there were street rats, before you said they had an infestation problem, part of me was thinking is Aladdin just in there stealing bread and stuff? Just a bunch of street rats, just little hoodlums coming.
Yeah, exactly. I wish it were something that whimsical as
a man with
acrobatic
a monkey and a fez hat on his shoulder.
Right, exactly. But no,
we just got parkour for that.
Just rodents that are pooping everywhere and probably peeing.
It can't be romanticized at all.
Exactly. So then the show starts. Okay. So
did the rats stay for the show?
I'm not sure. I think they stayed in the front room. I'm pretty positive.
One of them was heckling.
Yeah. Oh, that's the thing. But they only squeak, so the sound system was good enough. It got over that. So I go in and I do my bits, and I do very well. You're allowed on for 5 minutes, and then they play music and they play you off, kind of thing. And I did, but I didn't
wrap
eat
it.
It. Right? Yeah. But it wasn't like the Academy Awards. I had a really good set. And the owner of the club, he's on this dais of judges that judges the performance. Because immediately after you're done with your set, they go to the judgments. So the first guy was like, yeah, not bad. The second guy was like, yeah, not bad. The third guy, oh, I didn't really like it. So now it comes to the owner of the show, and he's like, I had a problem with that joke you told about Jesus. I do a joke that says, Jesus Christ didn't do a lot of things he would have been amazing at. Like the electric guitar or water skiing. He would have been incredible at water skiing. He falls. You don't even need to turn the boat around. He just come jogging up behind you with the skis on his shoulder.
He doesn't even need skis.
Exactly. He doesn't. Oh, I don't have a life jacket. Jesus is like, here you go. You can have mine. I'll save you. And so, I do that bit, and then, I say, Jesus never tried breakdancing. He would have been unbelievable at it. He's got those 12 guys that could surround him. Go, Savior! Go, Savior! They're all jumping around. It's your birthday! Merry Christmas! Go, Savior! So that's the bit. That's not really that. I mean, it's not. I don't find it to be controversial at all. No. This guy was like, well, you're making fun of Jesus. And
look past it.
That's exactly what I said. I'm saying Jesus is great. I'm saying he would have been a great break dancer. So the audience votes with applause.
And of course, the only way someone from that perspective can look at that is yeah, because it's ironic, because you're saying, oh, Jesus. We can make jokes about Morgan Freeman. It doesn't mean we don't like Morgan Freeman. He's the fucking shit. Morgan Freeman rocks. Who doesn't like Morgan Freeman? Seriously.
Exactly.
Somebody right now is listening to this going, did they really just compare Jesus to Morgan Freeman? I'm typing up a letter. Please do. Go to facebook.com/Fairpoint Podcast. We need that feedback. Let us know how fucked up we are for comparing Jesus to Morgan Freeman.
He was the voice of God. Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman or Jesus?
Yeah, Morgan Freeman
was, and Bruce Almighty. If he could play God, he could certainly be compared to his own son.
The Q rating is probably comparable. Jesus and Morgan Freeman. In terms of what people love, if I hear Morgan Freeman's voice, I'm stopping. I don't care when I'm watching.
Yeah.
He could be narrating. He could be narrating that one line he does. We are the kings of all creation. We were on the roof drinking beers. It could have been one of our own houses we were doing the roof on. It's when I hear that, I'm transported back there. It's damn it, Morgan Freeman, I love you so much. But anyway, so this club owner is I have a problem. I win the competition. The audience votes for me. And the guy's like, no, I want the girl instead.
Are you fucking kidding me?
What a dick.
So he took it away from me. But that's pervasive even today. Like that idea that you can't make a joke about certain things.
I mean, like, I would have looked at him and been like, you know what? I bet the rats would have kept me.
Exactly. I guess that's my whole point. It's like you're fine with rats being 2 feet from your nachos that you're handing out with an ungloved hand.
But you can't call Jesus a good breakdancer.
Right, you can't call Jesus a good breakdancer.
That's mocking him, apparently.
Right. Isn't cleanliness next to godliness? I've heard that before. And your place has a rat infestation in your front room. There's pee and rat poop everywhere.
So it's all about atmosphere. Come on.
Exactly. The problem with comedy clubs is the $9 quesadillas. I think that's really the main thing.
Yeesh, that's like ballpark extortion.
Oh, absolutely. Comedy clubs, it's all about extortion.
So how do you know Bill Hicks?
I was pretty much a comedy nerd all through high school. I loved all kinds of stand-up comedy. I had an appetite for it. Any kind of special that you could rent. When there were still video stores, you could rent comedy specials. I would rent the 10 for 10 at Emerald City Video in East Syracuse. They had 10 for 10 videos.
Video stores.
Yeah, and I miss them so much.
Fun.
You could just watch stand-up comedy for, before Netflix, before, you could get this stuff just beamed to you.
Yeah.
Like, that's basically what I did, and I just watched, like, ridiculous amounts of hours of stand-up comedy. So I came across Bill Hicks, and it was somebody that he was really big on, like, Usenet sites, like stand-up comedy Usenet sites.
Who would have thought that Usenet would be brought up in 2 episodes in a row, too? Jesus.
Right?
Is it 2013 still?
I know. Well, that's the thing. Like, the great...
Check your watch. Is it 2013?
But yeah, so I'm on Usenet. I see a lot of these guys are basically talking about Bill Hicks. They're canonizing him, essentially. And they're saying how, unbelievable and, he's just hysterical. So I started looking into his specials, most of which were not available in the United States. It was just, it was in a time period where, media it was very hard to get your hands on anything that wasn't available on network television or in cable or something like that.
Yeah, I remember the early 90s.
So then I got a hold of Bill Hicks, and it was Rant in E minor, and he basically goes on this diatribe about Jay Leno and how...
I haven't heard Rant in E minor yet. That's an entire album that's set to music, right?
Yes. One of the first... Well, I mean, I don't know if he was the first, but one of the stand-up comics that he played music, and it would kind of like come in and out with music. He was almost like a jazz musician. Like, not necessarily in improv, like he would be improvising on stage. The music would kind of flow into it. Like, it was more of an art expression. He goes on and on about Jay Leno, because Jay Leno did a Doritos commercial in the late 80s, early 90s. And Jay Leno has more money than God. There's no reason he needs to be doing Doritos commercials. And basically, you're off the artistic roll call once you do advertising. If you are going to lower yourself to do advertising, then you're out. And that he talks about how Jay Leno made a deal with the devil, and that's how he got his fame, and that's how he has But that's how I got introduced to Bill Hicks. Basically, it was his hatred of all things
Leno.
I don't know if it's necessarily Leno. It's just all things corporate advertising. It's horrible. It poisons your mind.
I was mostly introduced to him through the Tool song Third Eye. That's how I was like, who is this guy? It's clearly... A lot of my friends were just like, what do you mean? It's part of the song. And I'm like, that comes from somewhere, guys. Like, God, I had stupid friends.
Well, that was kind of like the boat that I was in, because I knew that song. And it wasn't that I was just like, oh, it's part of the song. They made it for the song. I really wasn't interested enough to like go deeper into like finding who it is at the time.
Whenever I hear stuff in music like that, I get really interested, especially if it's a sample from a movie or something. That's what I'd be like, is this a movie? It sounds like it's a stand-up comedian. I knew it. Like, I'm like, that's what it sounds like it is. And like... But who is the stand-up comedian that talks about shit like this? And there were certain
Carrot
parts
Top,
where
right?
This is rivaling Carrot Top levels of like social consciousness. Yeah, I don't know. So I was introduced to him because, of course, he's in the sample of that song "Third Eye," the last track of
Enema. Enema.
Not Enema. It's not Enema. It's Enema.
Well, it's like the A and the E are kind of like one letter.
That it's actually dedicated to Bill Hicks. The
whole album is?
Yeah, there's a Radiohead album dedicated to Bill Hicks too.
Okay Computer?
Which one? No, it's not.
Probably
OK
not.
Computer. The title song, Enema, is actually based on his Arizona Bay concept, I guess, from Rant in E minor.
Yeah, like, and because a lot of what, like, I'm pretty sure Bill Hicks actually went on tour with Tool and opened some shows. Because that's the thing. He was like a rock and roll act.
Yeah, he opened for them for a while.
So he was an actual rock and roll act, or it was like kind of like a
No,
Lollapalooza
he's
thing?
like
where...
a rock.
Yeah,
Oh,
he was
like
a
okay.
rock and roll.
Yeah.
Like he just comes on and there's
Not-
Peter Frampton just.
He was, a rock and roll act.
I missed the
but he
like
was
part.
with
I
no
missed
comma.
it.
He didn't like run on stage like with pyrotechnics or anything. Like that. It wasn't anything like that. It was more like
In Lollapalooza '92, he actually asked everybody when he came on stage. He was like, "This whole crowd's moshing," and he's like, "I think I lost a contact lens. Can you guys help me look for it?" And everybody like stops moshing, starts looking down at the ground, trying to help this dude find his contact lens. Hilarious.
I'm pretty sure he also opened like an adult video award. YouTube, really bad.
Oh, the
YouTube
Woodies?
Yes, something. It was the porn awards.
Really?
He did like came on.
They should have the Cinema Snob do the next one.
Yeah,
That would be
definitely.
fucking amazing.
He's reviewed enough porn.
And it's not like the porn awards are so high profile that they can't go to internet celebrities. Come on, it's the porn awards. All the contestants are internet celebrities. Let's be real.
That's true. That's true.
Of course, he. Like I said, we would be back to this whole topic of stealing material. Dennis Leary was accused of stealing from Bill Hicks.
And that breaks my heart.
More than accused, he clearly did.
Yeah.
I even read about someone, I don't know, some manager or something on this tour was like, when he came off stage, she's like, those are Bill Hicks jokes, right?
Bill Hicks' whole persona.
And he just, I guess, supposedly stopped. He just stared at her and like didn't say anything, and then just kind of walked away. Bill Hicks, I guess, was okay with it up until he recorded No Cure for Cancer, which was pretty much just an album of stolen Bill Hicks material that he's now selling in stores and making money off of, and he was pretty furious, and I guess their friendship kind of ended.
Yeah, if I was just kind of stealing your shit and releasing it and making money off it.
That is pretty much what this podcast
Yeah.
is. Let's be straight,
Okay.
Craig. Let's not mince words here.
Always stealing your shit.
I'm just joking.
I think the biggest issue with Leary was not that he took jokes, because sometimes that'll happen. Sometimes you'll have parallel thinking, and sometimes jokes will be similar. But basically, Bill Hicks would come out and he would smoke on stage, and he would talk about how much he enjoys smoking. He would criticize the drug war. He was anti-establishment. Then Dennis Leary comes out, essentially mimics his mannerisms, the tenor of his jokes.
Yeah.
And then that is almost what's worse. If only he had lifted a couple lines.
So was that like a Bill Hicks thing when he was like, I would still buy cigarettes even if they had skull and crossbones on them and they marked them cancer sticks? And
Right, Bill Hicks did a bit about something very similar to that. He said, you go to the store and they have like all the different warnings on cigarettes.
yeah, Surgeon.
And some of the warnings are like, you're going to get lung cancer. But a couple of the warnings are like, you're going to have low birth weight. And he goes, well, I found my brand. Give me a couple of those low birth weights. What do I care? I'm already born. Which that's the thing. That bit is way funnier than anything Dennis Leary came up with.
Right.
But it's like he stole Bill Hicks's.
All
At
Dennis
first,
Leary did
he
was get angry and said, nom, 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 I love cancer sticks.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
was probably okay with it at first because, they were friends. It was probably flattering to him, like a big brother type thing.
He was like, yeah, I'm still better.
I don't know. I don't know if as a comic you're ever flattered when someone is stealing your gig.
Well,
because
I read that he was cool with it. At some point, it was just like whatever.
right, yeah, before Dennis Leary became like this huge, he's on MTV and he's talking to Richard Gere and hey Richard, I'm gonna
Playing hockey with the Bruins.
Yeah,
What I read
exactly.
that was the final straw. Was when he recorded it to an album.
Right.
It's like, look, dude, kind of acting like me and kind of borrowing my jokes is one thing. Like recording it to an album and like when I go home and find out that you have a podcast called That's Fair.
Right, yeah, exactly. I'm like, hey, how's it
We
going?
are
This
no
is
longer
my friend
friends.
Chris. Doesn't sound anything like Craig, and he doesn't know anything either.
It's just the shit on Craig episode.
Man.
Man,
Sorry
I'm
about
sorry.
that. Sorry, I was just getting in the moment.
I have a couple funny quotes from Bill Hicks about the whole Dennis Leary thing. He said once to somebody, some news reporter or someone from some TV show, he's like, yeah, I have a scoop for you. I stole his act. I camouflaged it with punchlines, and to really throw people off, I did it before he did. Which is great. And then also when somebody once asked him why he quit smoking cigarettes, he replied, I just wanted to see if Dennis would too.
Which obviously he didn't.
Yeah. Apparently in 2004 there was this play called Bill Hicks' Slight Return. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
I guess some guy, it's in England. I make
Go
sense
figure.
to me now that you told me that he has a huge following over there. This guy named Chaz Early plays Bill Hicks. I think I heard it was a one-man play. I might be wrong. But he plays him. In the pictures, he's got like angel wings and everything. And it's about him coming back 10 years after his death and, commenting and what he thinks of the world now. So that's interesting. I don't know how that relates to Dennis Leary stealing his act and if this guy's just stealing it. But at least he's giving him credit and he's playing. I mean, as a British man playing an American comedian, I don't see it so much as...
Well, also, you gotta wonder if maybe, he's saying this is what Bill Hicks would be saying about the world now in his social commentary, but at the same time, he's no Bill Hicks.
But it's cool.
But it's definitely an homage,
in the pictures you see, you can tell it's not him, but it's pretty cool to see this guy with a cigarette and the angel wings looking like it's Bill Hicks standing there in a suit of white. And
the thing with Bill Hicks, I think, because, we don't know what Bill Hicks, his reaction would have been after 9/11, because essentially 9/11 changed the world that we live in. I was a freshman in college when it happened. And it's like Bill Hicks had already been dead for 7 years at that point.
Right.
And it's like I didn't have a Bill Hicks album to put on to listen to what Bill Hicks thought about, all this.
And he would have been able to say so much more now. I mean, even Jim Brewer talks about fucking 9/11 on a stand-up. The atmosphere is different as far as what's considered acceptable to joke about.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I think South Park revolutionized that.
Oh, yeah. Give credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
I think Bill Hicks would have loved South Park. South Park is essentially, it doesn't care what advertisers think. It puts things on that they want to say. Play from your heart. That's one of the best Bill Hicks bits that these guys
it's also one of the loudest Bill Hicks bits.
Yeah, absolutely. You probably couldn't play it. It would probably redline all of your equipment. Yeah. But it's like, play from your heart. I'm so sick of hearing these mediocre bands, the Justin Timberlakes of the world. Although Justin Timberlake is, he's at least a talented
back
actor.
then he was talking about what MC Hammer.
Yeah, MC Hammer,
Rick
and the New
Astley,
Kids on the Block.
Yeah.
Vanilla Ice.
Vanilla Ice was that's an excellent example.
He's talking about all of them.
And it's just like, play from your heart. Even if you're not good, at least do it from like a real place. And that's the thing. There's no reality anymore. Like we have reality television that's completely scripted. Duck Dynasty is a sitcom. It's a sitcom, people. Like, people are like, oh, I love that show.
I never thought about it that way. These are real people that run the real stuff in their day-to-day operations, but it's completely scripted as to what happens.
That's what it is it's unscripted. It's not scripted, but it's not real. It's unscripted television.
Right. It's improv TV.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not by any means reality television.
But like they set up certain things that happen in the episode.
It was the only reason I was correcting you on that because I was literally wavelengthing. Like I was about to be like, it's unscripted television. And
I just said
scripted, and I'm like, well, I can't say my point now. If
they have plot points and everything in the show and what's going to happen, and they just let them go at it. It's just weird to think like that's what you consider reality. Maybe it's because reality would just be way too boring.
The television that we have, because basically everything is eschewing reality. Everything right now, all media, is basically telling you don't pay attention to what's really happening. Like what's really happening. The government's watching you. There's drones flying somewhere right now in the world, and they could or could not kill somebody, and they have our name on it. Like, the United States is outright. All this stuff is happening. Don't pay attention to that. What's the name of Kim and Kanye's baby? That's what's important,
Oh, that'd be Northwest.
Right, yeah, exactly. Exactly. People can name the name of Kim and Kanye's baby. They couldn't name...
Is it really?
Yeah, it's North.
But I'm so happy that you don't know that.
I was too, up until about a minute ago.
I mean...
And that's exactly, he was saying what was going to happen before they, because I think the thing is, especially with like 9/11, there's no way we could have conceptualized 9/11 before it happened, because it just takes a special kind of sick to think, oh, we're going to fly these planes and we're going to take down these buildings. They probably didn't even know how successful it was going to be when they planned it. They were like, we'll probably cause a lot of damage and that'll be it. But, they changed the course of global history with this act. And there's no way you could have ever conceptualized that in 1994 when Bill Hicks was still alive.
In America, it was like, at that point, the only people that really knew what it was like to actually have an attack on their soil were World War II veterans.
Right.
So you got majority of the population in America is just like...
And to be fair, soil, I don't really count Hawaii as my home base. You know what I mean? Like, Hawaii could basically be like on another planet. planet. You know what I mean? It takes 2 days to get there on an airplane. Like, you know, it's like that's...
Do we say the same about Alaska?
Craig, can you do me a favor and go to our email and just mark any emails coming in from Hawaii as spam? We're about to get
yeah, exactly.
Now
I'm not saying they're not our
ornery...
friend. I'm not saying they're not with us. They're definitely a state.
Like what I was saying is everybody had this, you know, they were all secure that they were safe at home. Basically, the only people they had to worry about were like muggers, killers, and when you think about it, they should be worrying about a lot. But
that was a falsehood that was sold to us. We are safe. We are surrounded by oceans. Nothing can ever happen to us. How are they going to get us? We're the greatest, strongest country in the world. Go back to sleep, America. We're protecting you.
We don't need you to be afraid.
Are we like number 3 now?
We'll let you know. We'll let you know when we.
By the way, none of these are my. This is all Bill Hicks. I'm not purporting that any of these are my personal. Like, this is not my thinking. This is all borrowed from Bill Hicks. He was saying all this stuff 20 years ago, and it's like, you know, that's the thing. Like, I don't think you could say that about Louis C.K. I don't think you're going to say Louis C.K. and listen to a bit Louis C.K. does about 9/11, or Louis C.K. does about, you know, how he stole a rental car from the airport, or whatever the hell he's talking about now. And it's like Louis C.K. in 20, they're not going to look back and go, wow, Louis C.K. really said some really powerful things about 9/11. Or Louis C.K., you know, did you hear that thing that he talked about racism? And he talked about how his little girls, you know, they don't like the taste of bubblegum medicine, and you know, fuck you, you don't like the taste of bubblegum medicine. Like, that's a real like sophomoric take on, you know, how American children they have no concept of how lucky they are. Like that, to me, like Bill Hicks could do like an entire special about how America is so decadent that we will put entertainment news on for half an hour, just about celebrities, for half an hour at 5 o'clock. It's called Dish Nation. I'm pretty sure, and it's like every time it's on, I have to jump to the television because I want to have to turn it off. It's like, oh god, you know, it's right after Judge Mathis, so it's like, you know, I'm like enjoying Judge Mathis, and all of a sudden Dish Nation comes on, and they're like, oh, Halle Berry, and I'm like, oh god, and it's like,
and now people that don't have Dish, we have to fight with Entertainment Tonight. You got to fight with TMZ. And that's just all out, and it's
all about look at all this other stuff that's happening in America. This is what's important. It's important what these celebrities are doing. It's all just you know, shell game. That's the problem, I think, with a lot of comics now. None of them are pointing to those things. Like there's no Bill Hicks right now.
Yeah, I can't think of one.
I was sitting here waiting. I was like, Nathan, call him out. Prove him wrong.
There's definitely activist stand-up comics, but they're not as funny as Bill Hicks.
Honestly, I can't think of anybody else in Bill Hicks' league other than George Carlin right now.
Like, there's a comic, Ted Alexandro. He's really funny, and he's also an activist, but his comedy isn't necessarily part of his activism.
Okay, yeah.
Right, it's separate.
Right, like he's an activist that's also a stand-up comic.
Yeah, which is fine. Like we said earlier, you don't have to be.
Right, exactly. I'm not trying to, you know, Ted Alexandro is
yeah.
hysterical, and he's one of the ones that I love him. Like Dave Chappelle is one of those comics that everybody loves Dave Chappelle because they've seen the Chappelle Show.
Yeah.
Right.
But you know, he hasn't done a special since, you know, 2000.
Well, he stopped.
Block Party.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
He went to Africa.
Wasn't he back?
Well,
now?
he's back. Yeah, he's back. He's
back. Yeah, I know,
back.
but I mean, he's like, he doesn't want to be part of.
He's
that
off
world.
the grid.
Right.
Like, there was a reason he left.
Right, and it's like I wish Dave Chappelle, instead of just wigging out when he saw, you know, the curtain moved and like he saw that Oz was the corporations that are, you know, running everything. You know, instead of wigging out and going to Africa, I wish he wrote like a great hour.
A great about it. Yeah. Some people deal with it by bringing it to the forefront, and some people deal with it by
backing away,
backing out of it. And most of the people that back out of it, you never even hear about them because they never get to that point, and they're just like, "Fuck this." But yeah, the great ones like Bill Hicks, and at least we got to see some Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much bringing a close to the episode. We've been talking for a while now. Brandon, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Had a great time.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for coming out.
Oh, thanks. The pleasure was all mine. This was great. I love talking about Bill Hicks.
You know, one day we're sitting here thinking we're going to be doing Meredith Baxter Birney. Next thing you know, this man's crashing through our window, and now, you know, he's helped us make a terrific podcast.
I'm really happy that of all the secret rooms that I had scouted out and was going to break into, I'm very happy that this was the one that I picked.
Thank you. We're very happy you chose it too. We say this to all the guests, but you're welcome back anytime, of course, man. We'd love to have you on another episode.
But it has to be at least 4 weeks after we already had a guest.
Yes, because we got to keep that pattern up.
I'm going to make sure no one else is a guest on this show other than me.
Every 4 weeks, he's going to break that glass again.
Well, good, because I was going to, if we didn't have another guest after the 4-episode rotation, I was going to say I jinxed it by mentioning it on air, but now I can blame it on Brandon.
Absolutely. If someone falls through, you know why. It's because I have destroyed their vehicle. They have no way to get here.
They've actually fallen through a trap door.
Exactly.
As always, please check us out on Facebook. We need that like. We need your support. We need your feedback.
We need to know what you want.
Yes, we need to know. You have to communicate with us if this relationship is going to work.
Yeah, because communication is key to any healthy relationship. I should know I've been seeing a therapist for months now, and that's all he keeps beating into me.
Literally,
yes. He had a
that relationship.
He had a board that just had the word communication on it, and he was just beating me with it. Actually, come to think of it, I don't think he was a therapist. Now he kind of looked a lot like you, Brandon.
No comment. This is about your personal life.
Man, now all that money down the drain.
I don't think it's necessarily down the drain.
Well, yeah, it's in your pockets.
Well, but it's doing a lot of good for me. It's not down the drain.
And all I have to show for it are bruises.
No, I think we grew a lot in our sessions.
Do you even have an actual doctorate?
Well, I know where there are doctors. I don't know if I have a doctorate.
Is that the same thing?
I could probably point you to people that have doctorates that I know.
Close enough. Okay, whatever. So we're on for next Tuesday?
Yes, I'm on every Tuesday. If you're there or not, I'm hitting somebody.
And I thought I was special.
So yeah, Facebook.com/Fairpoint Podcast. Craig, what's our YouTube channel?
Our YouTube channel would be youtube.com/Fairpoint Podcast. I think you should see a pattern here.
And Craig, what's his YouTube channel?
It's the Syracuse Avengers or something. No, it's youtube.com/Syracuse Renegades. Check out all this stuff. Or you could just search Brandon Dyer.
That's me.
That's him.
And that is, of course, the Syracuse Renegades.
The Syracuse Renegades.
Yes.
The only ones. Thank
you guys for listening. Thanks again for stand-up comedian and cold, wet, sticky dragon Brandon Dyer for stopping by. In closing, we just want to leave you with a great quote from Bill Hicks. It's a great Bill Hicks quote, and I think he would appreciate us spreading his word. And yeah, we're not Dennis Learying it.
Learying.
Learying it.
No, I like Dennis Learying.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun. For a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride. And we kill those people. Shut them up. We have a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up. Look at my furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account and my family. This just has to be real. But it's just a ride. And we always kill those good guys who try to tell us that. You ever notice that? And they let the demons run amok? Jesus, murdered. Martin Luther King, murdered. Malcolm X, murdered. Gandhi, murdered. John Lennon, murdered. Reagan, wounded. But it doesn't matter because it's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice. Right now, between fear and love. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your doors, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see us all as one. Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Take all that money that we spend on weapons and defense each year and instead spend it on feeding and clothing and educating the poor of the world, which it would many times over, not one human being excluded. And we could explore space together, both inner and outer, forever in peace.
I can never start the slow clap. Nobody ever joins in.
Rest in peace to Bill Hicks. Great big bag of win. Thank you for listening, guys. Apparently, there's also Bill Hicks biopic. I always want to say biopic because it just, I don't know.
Because then you just get into the biopsy.
Yeah, that sounds like a medical procedure. But
can we get the biopic?
There's a biopic in the works.
Russell Crowe.
He knows.
He's producing it and apparently was also interested in the lead role for a minute there. Which is like, come on, is there anyone Russell Crowe can't play? Fuck casting Russell Crowe as everyone imaginable. He's not Bill Hicks.
Right back to Russell Crowe. He's not Bill Hicks.